Passengers are informed that the boxes are labeled wrong. That is the first box, the one in the express car, which the narrator assumes is the corpse of his friend, is actually a box of guns that is meant to go to Peoria, Illinois. And conversely, the second box, which the young man assumes contains the guns, actually contains John Hackett's corpse. And the narrator feels uneasy because as the car gets warmer, a searching smell thickens, intensifies, and spreads the inside of the express car. And he attributes it to the corpse of his friend, John B. Hackett. But he is happy that expressman, that is Thompson, has not noticed this hitherto. But a change in the attitude of Thompson is seen. That is to say, the initially enthusiastic, happy Thompson gradually changes or gradually becomes silent, and an ominous stillness pervades the inside of the express car. So let's see. After a few moments, Thompson said, "You, I reckon it ain't no cinnamon it have loaded up this year's stove with." So Thompson slowly gets the or feels the stench, and he says that it is not from anything inside, anything related to the express car, rather it is emanating from elsewhere. He gasped once or twice, then moved toward the gun box, the coffin, which was actually the gun box, stood over the Limburger cheese, part of a moment, then came back and sat down near me, looking a good deal impressed. After a contemplative pause, after thinking for a while, contemplative, meditative, to think, he said, indicating the box with a gesture. So he moved towards the box, or he found out that the smell is emanating from the box. And he asks the narrator, "Friend of yours? Is that your friend inside the box?" "Yes," I said with a sigh. So he's caught. So with a sigh, he agrees that yes, he is pretty ripe, ain't he? So this is not a fresh body. So the body has been dead for long. So Thompson asks, he is pretty ripe, ain't he? See the language of Thompson, the dialect, the American dialect that Thompson uses. Nothing further was said for perhaps a couple of minutes, so an awkwardness between the two, each being busy with his own thoughts. Then Thompson said in a low, awed voice. Awed means with respect and adoration and also fear. Sometimes it's uncertain whether they are really gone or not. Seem gone, body warm, joints limber, very flexible. And so, although you think they are gone, you don't really know. I've had cases in my car. It's perfectly awful because you don't know what minute they'll rise up and look at you. Then, after a pause and slightly lifting his elbow toward the box, "But he ain't no trance. No, sir, I go bail for him." So Thompson declares that the corpse is pretty ripe, and after a few awkward moments, Thompson tries to put a positive spin on the stink or on the stench. So he starts or he recollects cases in his car, his experiences with the corpse, cases in his car wherein he has transported corpses in the past. He says it's awful and frightening because he feared that the corpses may come alive any time. But he assures the narrator that he can tell by the stench, by the smell, that his friend won't do them any harm. And now he continues, he quotes from the scriptures, holy books, and concludes that all has got to go one day. We sat some time in meditative silence, listening to the wind and the roar of the train. Then Thompson said with a good deal of feeling, well, we'll all have to go. There ain't no getting around it. Man that is born of woman is a few days and far between, as scripture says. So he starts quoting scripture. Yes, look at it any way you want to. It's awful solemn and curses. Then nobody can get around it. All's got to go. Just everybody, as you may say. One day you are hearty and strong, another day you'll have to leave. Here he scrambled to his feet and broke a pane and stretched his nose out at it a moment or two, then sat down again while I struggled up and thrust my nose out at the same place. So Thompson starts quoting the scripture, but the smell doesn't subside, and Thompson breaks the window pane and inhales some fresh air from outside, which both the narrator and Thompson kept on doing every now and then. So he scrambled to his feet. He stood up and went or broke the window pane and stretched his nose outside to get some fresh air. So they are now trying to mask the stink emanating or believed to be emanating from the corpse. And next day he is caught. So Thompson continues his narration. He quotes from the scriptures. And next day he has cut down like the grass, and the places which knowed him then knows him no more forever. As scripture says, yes, needy, it's awful solemn and curses, but we have all got to go one time or another. There ain't no getting around it. So there is no escape. All of us are supposed to die one day or the other. There was another long pause. Then, what did he die of? So after a long contemplative pause again, Thompson inquired about the dead body, that how long his friend has been dead. I said I didn't know. How long has he been dead? It seemed judicious to enlarge the facts to fit the probability. So I said 2 or 3 days. But it did not go. But it did no good. So the stench was so hard to bear. So even though his friend died a day before, to fit the probabilities, he told that 2 or 3 days. It was so thick and unbearable a smell. So he says 2 or 3 days. But Thompson disagrees to this, because the corpse could not rot and produce such a pronounced smell in few days. So his acquaintance with the corpses or transporting corpses in the express car made him believe that it is not 2-3 years, so 2-3 days, rather it may be 2-3 years. But it did no good, for Thompson received it with an injured look which plainly said, 2 or 3 years, you mean? Then he went right along, placidly, very calmly, ignoring my statement, gave his views at considerable length about the unwisdom of putting off burials too long. So, disapproving to the narrator's accounts, Thompson continued about his views, to give his views on conducting proper burials, and that Hecat's body should have been laid to rest long ago. Then he launched off toward the box, stood a moment, then came back on a sharp trot. Trot means a jog, a quick, fast walk. Then came back on a sharp trot and visited the broken pane, observing, it would have been a dumb sight better all around if they had started him long last summer. So it should have been laid to rest long ago. Thompson sat down and buried his face in his red silk handkerchief and began to slowly sway and rock his body like one who is doing his best to endure, to tolerate, to suffer the almost unendurable, unbearable. By this time, the fragrance, the smell, if you may call it fragrance, because it is so malodorous, was just about suffocating, unbearable to breathe or inhale, as near as you can come at it. Thompson's face was turning grey. I knew mine hadn't any color left in it. So both grew pale because now the smell is so thick and unendurable. By and by, Thompson rested his foreground in his left hand with his elbow on his knee and sort of waved his red handkerchief toward the box with his other hand and said, I have carried many a one of them, some of them considerably overdue, too. But Lordy is just lays over them all and does it easy. Cap. So he addressed his narrator as Captain. There was heliotrope to him. This recognition of my poor friend gratified me, in spite of the sad circumstances, because it had so much the sound of a compliment. Pretty soon it was plain that something had got to be done. I suggested cigars. Thompson thought it was a good idea. He said, likely it will modify him some. He puffed gingerly long for a while, very cautiously, carefully, and tried hard to imagine that things were improved. But it wasn't any use. Before very long and without any consultation, both cigars were quietly dropped from our nerveless fingers at the same moment. Thompson said with a sigh, no, Cap, it don't modify him worth a cent. Fact is, it makes him worse because it appears to stir up his ambition. What do you reckon we better do now? So, in an effort to get away from the smell, the narrator suggests cigars. But the cigars fail, and I was not able to suggest anything indeed. I had to be swallowing and swallowing all the time and did not like to trust myself to speak. Thompson fell to maundering, a confused babble, confused talk, in a desultory and low-spirited way. He has lost all his enthusiasm and spiritless about the miserable experience of this night, and he got to referring to my poor friend by various titles. sometimes military ones, sometimes civil ones. And I noticed that as fast as my friend's effectiveness grew, Thompson promoted him accordingly, gave him a bigger title. So, as the smell grew, Thompson started to address uh, Thomas B. Hackett or the corpse using military and civil titles. And as the stench increased, the effectiveness, the smell grew, he gave him promotion. He promoted him to high profile or high ranks, gave him a bigger title, and finally said, I've got an idea. Suppose we buckle down to it and give the colonel a bit of a show towards it other end of the car, about 10 foot, say, he wouldn't have so much influence then. Don't you reckon? So Thompson suggests that they move the box to the other end of the express car so that the smell won't be so much felt. He wouldn't have so much influence. I said it was a good scheme, a good idea. So we took in a good fresh breath at the broken pane, calculating to hold it till we got through, till we finished pushing or shoving the box to the other end. Then we went there and bent over that deadly cheese and took a grip on the box. Thompson nodded, all ready? And then we threw ourselves forward with all our might. So they both of them all set to to shove the box to the other end. But Thompson slipped and slumped down with his nose on the cheese, and his breath got loose. He gagged and gasped and floundered up and made a break for the door, pawing the air and saying hoarsely, Don't enter me, give me the road, I'm a dying, give me the road. Out on the cold platform, I sat down and held his head a while, and he revived. So, in their attempt to push the box to the other end, Thompson slips and he fell on the cheese, and he lost the fresh hair he preserved. He gagged and gasped and ran outside the express car's platform to get some fresh air. The narrator also follows him, and there they discuss their predicament. However, they cannot stay outside for long because they'll freeze to death in the stormy winter weather. But neither can they get inside and bear the smell of the corpse or the cheese, corpse bar cheese. Presently he said, Do you reckon we started the general any? I said, No, we hadn't budged him. Well, then that's the idea. That idea's up the flume. We got to think of something else. He has suited where he is, I reckon. And if that's the way he feels about it, and has made up his mind that he don't wish to be disturbed, you bet he's going to have his own way in the business. Yes, better leave him right where he is, long as he wants it to. Because he holds all the trumps, don't you know? And so it stands to reason that the man that lays out to alter his plans for him is going to get left. So the two decides to leave the corpse undisturbed because he is the powerful one now, and so they think of other means to mask the odor of the corpse. But we couldn't stay out there in that mad storm. We should have frozen to death. So we went in again and shut the door, began to suffer once more, take turns at the brake in the window. By and by, as we were starting away from a station where we had stopped a moment, Thompson pranced in cheerily and exclaimed, We are all right now. I reckon we have got the Commodore this time. I judge I've got the stuff here that I'll take the tuck out of him. It was carbolic acid. So, when the train pulls away from the next train station, Thompson comes back into the express car with carbolic acid. It is a disinfectant. Okay, so with this, he can get away. He thought he could get away with the smell of the corpse. He had a carboy of it. He sprinkled it all around everywhere. In fact, he drenched everything with it, rifle box, cheese, and all. Then we sat down feeling pretty hopeful. But it wasn't for long. You see, the two perfumes began to mix. So he doses the box and cheese with the acid. It only adds a new order, magnifying, intensifying the first